Hi and welcome to the new edition of Workforce News. There's been a lot in the press recently about the government's new policy on apprenticeships, so we thought we'd have a look at it in more detail and have a look at what we think the impact might be for local government. So to take us through the policy in a bit more detail, we've got James Holden here from the DCLG. So James, can you tell me the headline changes that the new policy will bring?
So I'd pick out three headlines. There's the public sector targets, the apprenticeships levy, and the forthcoming Institute for Apprenticeships. I think that'd be the three main changes that we'll see. The public sector levy will apply to all employers. There's an opportunity for them to get more from it than they put into it, and it will come into force from April 2017. There's the public sector targets, which is part of the enterprise bill currently going through Parliament, and that will set a duty for local government to have regard to certain targets for the numbers of apprenticeships. And then finally the Institute for Apprenticeships, which was really concerned about quality and setting apprenticeship standards.
And what's the government hoping to achieve with these changes?
So again, I'd pick out three things. Over the last period since 2010, we've managed a significant increase, 2 million new apprenticeships. We want to go further and have 3 million apprenticeship starts this Parliament. That's ambitious, and particularly ambitious for local government, where we'd be looking at an increase of sort of 6 times the number of apprenticeships that have previously been achieved, so something around 35,000 apprenticeship starts. That is a big ask, but I think the ambition is out there in local government. And I think the benefits to local government will be felt in the workforce, in new starters, in social mobility, in giving opportunities for existing staff to shift and change career. So I think there are some really exciting opportunities ahead.
So James, the recent consultation on the policy closed in March. What happens next?
So the most recent consultation on the public sector target, the responses to that are being considered by BIS, and there's obviously a lot of work for local government to do, both in terms of understanding the levy and the impact on workforce planning and in some cases reshaping, looking at the opportunities. So a lot of work for local government as much as central government, I would say.
Thank you, James. We're now going to speak to our lead member at the LGA for Skills, Linda van den Hende, and we're going to ask her about the impact that we think these government proposals might have for councils. So local government are already the biggest employer of apprentices, so how will this impact on us?
The Local Government Association and all local councils are very supportive of the government's intention to increase by 3 million by 2020 the number of apprenticeships. We're already doing a lot of work in this area, as are local authorities up and down the country. My own local authority has a very successful record in apprenticeships, having just won a Gold Award for apprenticeships. We have 21 apprentices that have gone through a 2-year fixed-term contract, and 5 of those have found employment within the local authority, and 5 we have found employment in local businesses in our area. Youth unemployment is a big issue in the country, and certainly apprentices are an excellent way, particularly for people who are perhaps not academically particularly good, but they have the opportunity, they have the technical skills that we can train them in the areas that we want, particularly in areas of where we're having difficulty recruiting, planning, social work, parks and open spaces, street care, all of the things that local authorities do. And I think one of the benefits of employing local young people is the fact that they know the area, they know some of the issues, they have friends and family who live in the area, and therefore they are actually contributing to the local economy.
So do you think that the government's policy is an opportunity to do more on apprenticeships?
Absolutely. There is no doubt that the government has given us some stringent targets, and we're very happy and very willing to meet those targets. I think, however, that the government's sort of 2.3% target and the 0.5% of the pay bill is a bit of a straitjacket in some ways. I think that the government needs to be more flexible to allow local government to have the delegated funding and training arrangements so that we can actually target it better. I think sitting in central government, it's not so easy to look at the various differences up and down the country. Some areas may have large scale construction and engineering, which may be something that they're looking for, whereas other parts of the country, perhaps we need social workers and planners, for instance. So I think that it needs to be more flexible. There is no doubt that we need to offer high quality apprenticeships. There's no point in doing it unless we do the high quality ones. We need to target school leavers so that they get some very good qualifications that will, last a lifetime and allow them to mature and progress. And at the end of the day, we have to work in partnership with our local economic development community. And again, different councils have different opportunities to do that. We're not all the same, and I think this is the problem with the current proposal, is there's an assumption that every council is the same, and it isn't. We're all at different stages of development, we're all at different budgetary situations, and with the cutbacks in local government spending, all of this actually is much more complex for us to provide, and the 0.5% of the budget, which is also, doesn't sound very much, but actually is a huge amount of money against a time when we have government cutbacks. It's incredibly difficult to see, in all honesty, how we're going to do it without the flexibility that we desperately need.
Thank you very much. We're going to speak now to Nigel Carruthers and to Philip Bundy from the workforce team here at the LGA, and we want to get a little bit more detail from them on how we think this policy on apprenticeships might be implemented in local government. So these are big numbers of employees that we're talking about, and that's going to bring its own challenges. Can you talk to us a bit more about that, Phil?
Sure, they're big numbers, and we're going to have to do this at a time when we are reducing the workforce. We've got recruitment freezes in place. So, how are we going to do this? And it's not a simple case of just saying, well, we can convert the roles that we already recruit to into apprenticeship ones. We're going to have to look at recruiting to new types of roles. But there's some very specific issues for local government that we raised to the government about the target in terms of what they raised for us. And the first one is in terms of our schools. The local authority maintains schools. Now, when they're working out our headcount figures and the target, they include the school staff. Now, they are technically our employees, but of course we don't manage recruitment in schools. That's done by the governing body. They have control of it. So if the governing bodies and schools don't play ball with us, we end up with a disproportionately high number of apprentices in the rest of the workforce. Now, the second issue we've got as well is that we contract out a lot of our services, and those services are provided by contractors, and we work with those a lot of the time to say, hey, can you have some apprenticeships in your contract that you're working on for us? And we say that when that happens, they should be included within the our apprenticeship target figures. That would seem fair and appropriate. And then finally, I think a big issue for us, because of the number of part-time employees we've got, they represent about 60% of our employees, is we say the target should be based not on what our actual pure number of employees is, it should be based on a full-time equivalent basis. And we're hoping that the government will listen to that and base it actually on a full-time equivalent basis.
So Nigel, it's clear from everything we've heard, there's opportunities, but there's also challenges from this policy that the government wants to introduce. So what can you recommend for councils to do?
Well, I think the first thing I'd say is councils are already, I would say, leading the way in the public sector around apprenticeships. We've been working in this field for decades, and we've been providing apprenticeship opportunities. And as we've heard already, not just as employers, but working with our supply chain, working with our communities. Councils have a varied role around apprenticeships, and that has been, I guess, the way we've taken forward apprenticeships in our local communities. But I suppose we know the targets are coming, we know the levy's coming, and although we've lobbied quite hard to be exempt from both of those, the reality is we will have to be faced with these targets and this financial pressure of having this amount of money that's going to be set aside to be invested in training of apprentices. So let's look at this as an opportunity, and I think that's where certainly when I've been going around to talk to councils up and down the country, talking to members, talking to lead HR professionals, talking to economic development leads in councils, there's a recognition that yes, we can do more around apprenticeships, but we need that to be done based on the needs of our communities and the needs of our workforce, a top-down target is not helpful to us or the communities in which we serve. So therein lies the challenge. We will have money in an account to spend on training, but how do we take forward that opportunity? And I mentioned before the level of investment we're talking about is quite significant. So how do we do that? I suppose there are three things. The first thing we need to look at is the quality of the opportunities we're providing. So are we providing the right opportunities? And I think if we look at our talent progression, we look at the kind of skill shortages we have in the workplace, let's see how apprenticeships can support the recruitment of people into those hard to fill roles and make those roles that people take as apprentices real quality opportunities. The second one is around provision, because one of the challenges that we want to see, and the government's policy is all about trying to drive up skills in communities, is we need quality provision. So again, the council has a real key role in working with the providers, or even being a provider in fact in this marketplace, to improve apprenticeships. And I suppose the third thing is around giving opportunities for people in the workplace who don't usually get training and development opportunities. So again, looking at that fair access to learning, looking at those people who aren't qualified, can we give those people an opportunity? So I think, yes, it's a huge challenge. Yes, it's money that we would want to spend elsewhere, no question about that. But if the money is going to be there and it is part of the government's policy, let's get access to that money and spend it in the best way we can in this challenge, in this area of adversity. Let's try and look at this as an opportunity. And councils are doing that. And we've got examples, and we've been going out and finding those examples, and they'll be available on our website.
Can you give us a few short examples of what those are?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what the interesting thing is when we've looked at each of these council examples is, the reason for why councils were embarking on apprenticeships. So I think what I'll try and do is outline those. So the first one I'd kind of draw your attention to is Brighton and Hove. As part of their city strategy around employment and skills, they put apprenticeships as central to achieving increasing employment opportunities. As a workforce within the council, they again, as I've already said, looked at the talent pipeline, looked at succession planning, and looked at actually the workforce diversity. So actually, how could they make their workforce represent the community in which they were serving? So again, used apprenticeships to do that. Tower Hamlets, who've got a very robust and long-standing in the community effective apprenticeship programme, they've just started to introduce a health and social care partnership, look at working with other councils in the area to look at how apprenticeships can support health and social care employment. Trafford Council and Surrey County Council, they've looked at the looked after children within their care and how they can provide them with that first step on the employment ladder through an apprenticeship opportunity. And Lancashire County Council, they again, as many councils do, have a priority around NEETs, people who are not in employment or education or training, and they've used NEETs as a driver for why they've invested in apprenticeships. And I've got an example here of a brochure from Doncaster. They've got an apprenticeship prospectus, for 2016. So the ambition is there within councils. The reality is we base it on need, not on a government target.
Nigel and Phil, thank you very much. That was really helpful. That was a really interesting look at what's already going on apprenticeships. And of course, it's really early days for the government's policy, and we're waiting to hear quite how that will be implemented. Of course, we'll keep you up to date on our website. But in the meantime, if you have any questions or any comments on anything we've talked about today, please get in touch with us on our usual email address, which is workforce@local.gov.uk.